Well, hello once again all my vintage dirt bikers, and of course a very special hi and welcome back to all of my loyal subscribers to my Classic Dirt Bike TV channel here on YouTube. Now in my next video posting we are going to check out another example of those British made Alan Clues classic CCM 4-strokers that were immensely popular in the 1970s and 1980s. So I do hope you'll all hang around as we take a gander at Lewis Bell's 1974 540 CCM replica. Now, as the word suggests, this isn't an original CCM bike from 1974, but is another replica of one of these legendary bikes, and this featured example is another bike from the Joe Maxwell Engineering workshop. Now the bike's chassis is a carbon copy of the original CCM bike from 1974, and our particular frame was made by Joe Maxwell Engineering in Thornhill in Dumfries, who produces these frames and many other CCM parts under license from the Clues factory. Now the bike's owner, Lewis Bell, bought this machine as an unfinished project back in 2009. Now Lewis already rides a Shenny Jawa, which he races in the pre-1968 vintage class, and Lewis also uses this British made CCM in the pre-1975 events. And although despite it not being a treasured original copy, this is still a very good example of how one of these bikes would have looked like in 1974. But nevertheless, these 74 replica bikes are becoming more popular with vintage racers nowadays, as there's virtually nothing that you can't buy for these bikes, because many of the bits that you need to build a full bike can be sourced almost directly from stock, and even the period correct plastics here are being remanufactured and can be bought from Cumbria Classic Mouldings, who strangely also have the abbreviation of CCM in their company title. Now this particular engine in Lewis's machine started its life as a standard BSA B50 500 MX motor, which was then bored out to 540cc. Now the bike was raced in that particular specification until the end of the 2014 racing season. Now soon after that, Lewis then rebuilt the engine and fitted it with an upgraded NEB crankshaft and piston kit, and he also fitted a much bigger 600cc barrel. Now the gearbox also got a makeover at this particular point, and this was also upgraded to a stronger PES 3-speed gearbox, which was supplied by Performance Engineering Services. Now the clutch also was improved by fitting a heavy duty unit, again from PES, but these PES parts are very high quality and normally very reliable and much stronger than the BSA originals. Now with regards to the bike's front suspension department, this bike's front forks on Lewis's CCM are Italian made Marzocchis, which were very good for their time period, and these again are a popular fitment to these remanufactured CCMs. Now the bike's front brake hub, as you'd expect, is from a Czechoslovakian CZ bike, and again these are widely used on many of these old vintage racers and not just these CCM bikes. But as drum brakes go, these CZ items were decent stoppers for their day. Now the rear shocks are again a pair of Dutch made Riger shocks. Now these are maybe not as good as a pair of Swedish built Öhlins, but they're probably certainly the next best thing. Now Renthal race bars on Lewis's bike with that engine kill switch fitted on the left hand side there, which of course is a mandatory requirement if you race a bike at a Scottish Classic motocross race event. Now there is a substantial rear sprocket on this particular bike, which is probably fitted to complement that 3-speed gearbox on the CCM motor, and this combination will certainly have no trouble at all digging trenches and rooster tails when you light up that 4-stroke motor. Now these 1974 CCM replica alloy fuel tanks are an exact copy of the 1970s original, and these held just about enough gas to feed that Italian-made Dell'Orto carburetor with the many pints of fuel that flowed through it to that 600cc motor. But these tanks were also very slim and very light because they were made of alloy, and of course they also had that Monza style fuel cap on top. And again, these fuel tanks are easily obtainable from various CCM parts suppliers. Now in terms of the motor's sparks, Lewis's bike doesn't use the more popular interspan ignition system, but uses a PVL system, which is not really a self-contained unit like the interspan, but is an electronically generated ignition system. But original or not, this is still a very good looking bike, and it's thanks of course to the late Alan Clues, who started CCM motorcycles back in the early 1970s, that we're still enjoying these superb bikes in this modern day. Now, although original versions of Alan's creations are becoming harder to find these days, and it's great that we still have the likes of Joe Maxwell Engineering still producing replicas of these 1974 bikes, and of course it's thanks also to the likes of Lewis for keeping these bikes racing on the racetrack. Okay, we've talked a little about Lewis's CCM bike. Let's have a look at Lewis in action at a classic scramble at Penrith in 2018. And you can see that Lewis has already got a decent start there in second position, and this is one of the pre-1975 class races, and almost before lap 1's finished, Lewis has already taken the lead and opened up a gap on this very quick CCM bike. Now, just in case you haven't seen these CCM bikes in action on a racetrack, it's a fantastic sight to see these old British-made BSA derived bikes still racing in this modern day, and this bike of course of Lewis's is a very quick machine indeed. Now this of course is Lewis's second race bike. You may have seen Lewis racing his big 500 Jawa in a previous video here on my YouTube channel, but as you can see, these big CCM 4-strokers are just ideally suited for this type of classic scrambling. Now Lewis in fact did go on to win this particular race on this very fast CCM bike, but although these are still replicas of the Alan Clues' original bikes, these are still nonetheless carbon copies of what was in 1974. So there you have it. I do hope you've enjoyed this very brief look around Lewis Bell's 1974 remanufactured CCM. Now of course, if these are the kind of machines that you like to look at here on YouTube, then maybe you will consider subscribing to my channel to see many more of these old classic race bikes. So once again, thanks for taking the time to view my video content, and we'll speak again when we return to Classic Dirt Bike TV.